You know the feeling. Someone pulls away. A message goes unanswered. A room goes quiet when you walk in. A person you trusted chooses someone else. And somewhere in your chest, something that feels disturbingly close to pain begins. Not metaphorical pain. Not the vague discomfort of disappointment. Something that actually hurts. Something that makes you catch your breaths. Something that, if you described it to someone who had never felt it, you would call it physical. And you would be right. Because what your brain does with social rejection is not a figure of speech. It is not poetic language borrowed from physical experience. Your brain processes the pain of rejection using the same neural circuits it uses to process a broken bone. The same regions, the same signals, the same chemistry. When you say rejection hurts, you are being more literally accurate than you know. Here is why that happens, and here is what it tells you about what you actually are. Your brain is, at its core, a survival machine. Everything it does is in service of keeping you alive long enough to pass on your genes. And for the vast majority of human history, survival was not a solo project. You did not survive alone. You survived in a group, a band of people who shared resources, shared protection, shared warmth, shared the impossible difficulty of staying alive in a world that was actively trying to kill you. Being part of the group was not a social preference. It was a biological necessity. Exclusion from the group was not awkward. It was a death sentence. If your band of 50 people decided you were no longer welcome, you died. Alone on the savannah, without shelter, without food, without anyone to watch your back while you slept. You did not last long. This is the context in which your brain evolved. And this is why your brain learned, over hundreds of thousands of years, to treat social rejection as an emergency. Not a disappointment, not a setback, an emergency. The same category as a physical wound, because in the environment your brain was built for, social rejection and physical damage were equally likely to kill you. Naomi Eisenberger is a neuroscientist at UCLA who spent years trying to understand the relationship between social pain and physical pain. In 2003, she and her colleagues ran an experiment that would change how scientists understood rejection. They put participants inside an fMRI scanner, a machine that tracks blood flow in the brain in real time, and had them play a simple computer game called Cyberball. 3 players tossed a virtual ball back and forth. What the participants did not know was that the other 2 players were not real. They were computer programs. And at a certain point in the game, the 2 computer programs simply stopped throwing the ball to the human participant. They started excluding them, deliberately, without explanation. The brain scan showed something that stunned the research community. The participants who were excluded showed significant activation in the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. This is exactly the region that processes the distress component of physical pain, the same region that lights up when you burn your hand on a hot stove, the same region that activates when a doctor presses on a bruise. It activated in response to being left out of a computer game by 2 programs that did not even exist. The brain does not check whether the source of pain is physical or social. It does not verify whether the rejection is real or simulated. It just runs its ancient protocol. Social exclusion detected. Pain response initiated. Do something about this immediately. Eisenberger later found something even more striking. She and her team tested whether common pain relievers could reduce the hurt of social rejection. Participants who took acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, before a social exclusion task reported feeling significantly less hurt by the rejection than participants who took a placebo. A painkiller designed for headaches reduced the sting of being left out. This is not a metaphor. This is chemistry. There is another layer underneath this that most people never hear about. The same system that makes rejection hurt is also the system that makes social connection feel good. Your brain runs on what researchers call the opioid system. Natural opioids, chemicals similar to morphine, are released in your brain when you experience social warmth. When someone smiles at you in a way that feels genuine. When you laugh with someone at the same moment. When you feel seen, chosen included. These chemicals are genuinely pleasurable. They are genuinely addictive in the same sense that food and warmth are addictive. Your brain wants more of them. Your brain is built to seek them. And when social connection is withdrawn, when the source of those opioid releases disappears, what you experience is something very close to withdrawal. The same dull ache, the same restlessness, the same longing for the thing that made the feeling go away. This is why rejection does not just feel bad. It feels like something is missing, like a need has been unmet, like your body is running low on something it requires. See Nathan DeWall, a psychologist at the University of Kentucky, extended Eisenberger's work in a series of studies that probe just how deep this overlap goes. He found that the metaphors humans across every language and culture use for emotional pain are almost entirely drawn from physical pain vocabulary. We say our hearts are broken. We say we feel crushed. We say it feels like a punch in the stomach. We say rejection is a wound that takes time to heal. DeWall argued that this is not accidental. These metaphors are accurate maps of the underlying neuroscience. The brain's circuits that process emotional pain borrowed their architecture from the older circuits that process physical pain. Social pain is not like physical pain. Social pain runs on the physical pain system. This has a practical consequence that almost nobody talks about. It means that when you are in the grip of rejection, your pain tolerance for everything else decreases. Studies have shown that people who have recently experienced social exclusion have lower tolerance for physical discomfort. The social pain is not contained. It bleeds. It raises the overall sensitivity of your nervous system. Everything hurts a little more when you are in the aftermath of rejection. This is not weakness. This is neuroscience. It also means that your brain, in the hours and days after rejection, is running a threat response. Your stress hormones elevate. Your immune system prepares for damage. Your cognitive resources narrow. You become more hypervigilant to social cues. You scan for evidence of further rejection. You interpret ambiguous signals as hostile. A neutral expression reads as disapproval. An unreturned message reads as abandonment. Your brain has gone into a kind of social high alert. Not because you are fragile. Because your ancient threat detection system has been activated, and it is doing what it was built to do. Roy Baumeister, a social psychologist at the University of Queensland, spent decades studying the behavioral consequences of rejection. His research found something counterintuitive. People who experience social rejection do not reliably move toward kindness or prosocial behavior. Instead, they often move in the opposite direction. They become more self-focused. They become more aggressive toward strangers. They become less likely to help others. They become more likely to take risks. Baumeister called this the need to belong hypothesis. When the fundamental human need for belonging is threatened, the brain shifts into a kind of survival mode that prioritizes self-protection over social cooperation. This is the same thing that happens when you feel physically unsafe. You stop thinking about others. You start thinking about yourself. The social pain system does not just generate hurt. It generates a defensive reorganization of your entire psychology. Now understand why all of this matters for how you experience your own life. Every time you hesitate to speak up in a meeting because you are afraid of how you will be received, your ancient pain avoidance system is running. Every time you hold back in a relationship because you are afraid of being too much and losing them, that is the same system. Every time you scan someone's face for signs that they are pulling away. Every time you replay a conversation looking for the moment things went wrong. Every time you brace for rejection before it happens, shaping your behavior around a pain that has not yet arrived. That is hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary engineering running exactly as designed. Because in the world your brain was built for, this vigilance was rational. Missing the early signs of social rejection could cost you your life. The brain that survived was the brain that noticed, that anticipated, that preemptively adjusted behavior to maintain belongings. Sensitivity to rejection was not a flaw. It was adaptive. It kept your ancestors alive. But here is the thing about living in a modern world with an ancient brain. The threat detection system cannot always tell the difference between someone genuinely withdrawing their love and someone simply being busy, between being excluded from the group and not being invited to one lunch, between true social danger and the minor friction of ordinary human relating. The alarm sounds either way. The pain response activates either way. The defensive psychology deploys either way. And so you carry the full weight of a survival system that was calibrated for life and death social stakes into every ordinary interaction, every unreturned call, every moment of awkward silence, every relationship that ends for reasons that have nothing to do with your worth as a person. But knowing this changes something, not the pain. The pain is real and it will come regardless of how much you understand it. What changes is what you make the pain mean. When your brain tells you that rejection is an emergency, you now know the origin of that signal. You know it is the ancient system doing its ancient job. You know that the intensity of the pain is not a measure of how wrong you are, how defective you are, or how alone you will always be. It is a measure of how social your species is, of how much you were always meant to need other people, of how deeply belonging is woven into the biology of what you are. The brain that flinches at rejection is not a weak brain. It is a brain that was built for connection. A brain that knows, somewhere below language, how much belonging matters. And every time it hurts, that is what it is telling you. Not that you are unwanted, that you were built to want to be wanted. And there is nothing more human than that.